Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you are doing good today, and it is that time of the week again. We're going to take a look at some of our young players here in Seattle, some of the first years and second years, and try to get a feel for how things are developing with these guys. And I can tell you, most of the news is good. The news is mostly good. Life is good for the future of this team in terms of the younger players and their development. So that's certainly a positive to be found in this season that looks like it's not going to go in a great direction right now. And it's the most important thing. As I've said before, what this team does this year, okay, sure. You want to see good things, you want to see positive signs for the future. But you more importantly want to get the idea that things are developing in the right way for next year and the year after and the year after that. So, what I'm seeing on the football field from these players is mostly pretty good. And the things that I'm seeing after doing research after the game are backing that up mostly. So, we are trending in the right direction on both levels here. And that's great news. Obviously, we need these guys to take many more steps forward before they are where we want them to be. But I do believe those steps are being taken. So let's start with the offensive line. This is kind of the big one. These guys are really important. And the early returns have been mostly quite good. Charles Cross played a good game against the Falcons. He did allow a sack. He did, but he still had a positive game overall. The pass protection in the Falcons game in general was actually really good, especially from the tackles. And even though Cross allowed a significant sack relatively late in the game, his PFF grade was still positive. His overall play was still positive. And his run blocking wasn't great. Admittedly, his run block grade did drop a little bit, but overall he is playing at an approximately league average level, which is good for a player playing his first 3 games ever, playing for an offense that is limited. We have a limited quarterback. We have limited pieces on the interior of the offensive line. We are giving Charles Cross limited help with some of these pass rushers that he's dealing with. So that he is holding up like this is quite impressive. And it's going to be a long time before we know, but with the way Charles Cross is coming along, I believe he is on a path that will set him towards being an elite left tackle. Abraham Lucas also had a good game. His run blocking was a little bit better than Cross. His overall play was cleaner than Charles Cross. His overall play this season, according to PFF, has been a little bit better. And based off what I'm seeing watching the games, it seems to me that that's the case. He allowed a couple of pressures, but nothing significant. I don't think he's allowed a quarterback hit this year. And the main strike against Lucas through 3 games has been the penalties. And I don't know about some of these penalties, man. Like the one against Denver in particular was thin. I'm not going to say it was a terrible call, but it was thin. So even that part of it, which I know is dragging that PFF grade down a little bit, I question it. So these guys are on the right track. Through 3 games, Cross has allowed 8 pressures and Lucas has allowed 7. And that sounds like a lot, and maybe it is, but just to kind of ground myself, I did a little bit of research, and Orlando Brown, the guy playing for the Kansas City Chiefs, one of the better left tackles in the league, a veteran, a guy who turned down $140 million because he thinks he's worth more than that, has actually allowed 9 this season on a similar number of snaps. So, really, we're doing pretty well for ourselves with a left tackle allowing 8 and a right tackle allowing 7. And honestly, if you look around the league at some of the other rookie tackles, I think, and it may not bear itself out yet, I think we may have ended up with the best left tackle and the best right tackle in this draft when all is said and done. I think that is where we're headed. The other guys in this draft that went really high, guys like Evan Neal and Ike Ekwonu, I don't I just don't really see the same level of upside with them. Maybe not Lucas, but even Lucas, I kind of feel like is actually headed that way. So awesome stuff there. They're both playing at approximately league average levels as players playing their first 3 games ever. Linebackers, we still only have one that's actually playing. It's Boye Mafe. He played a pretty good game against the Falcons, especially against the run. PFF loves his play against the run. He's head and shoulders and chest and waist, everything above Darrell Taylor in that regard. And it makes you feel like Mafe could stand to be moved into the starting lineup so he plays more snaps against the run. As a pass rusher, not anything huge, but as an overall player, he is getting it done. And for a guy who I felt coming into this year was going to be really raw, he doesn't really look it yet. So Mafe playing well, needs more time, he needs more snaps. Offensive skill players, we got Ken Walker, who had a good game. He busted his first ever long carry in the NFL. He had a couple other productive touches. He's catching passes out of the backfield. I don't know if PFF docks him for the 2 plays in the last 2 weeks where he went the wrong way on a running play. But if they did, then it's actually kind of positive that even with those 2 fairly disastrous plays, his PFF grade is still at 66.2. And given the fact that our interior offensive line is not playing that well through 3 games, the fact that he's grinding out some production regardless is actually pretty notable. And it's also very notable that he got the fly sweep touch instead of Eskridge. Eskridge did not touch the ball in this game. And Ken Walker got the typical Eskridge touch, and he did something with it. It was actually a very positive play for us. So I don't know if that's going to be the ongoing use of him going forward, but in very limited time, admittedly, we're going to need plenty more touches for Ken Walker before we fully evaluate him. I liked it. I think we're headed in the right direction here. Eskridge, 12 snaps, so he actually played a little bit more. And it looks like we're going to, at some point, attempt to get him on the field on a punt return. But his PFF grade dipped significantly down to 55. He just kind of looks like a guy out there. I will say he threw a couple impressive blocks in that game. He had a very nice block on the long Ken Walker run, actually. But we're still not going anywhere near where we want to be with him right now. And it almost, I don't think we're there yet. It almost feels like the team has kind of just thrown in the towel on him and they're not even thinking about him anymore. Like I said, the fly sweep went to Ken Walker. How random is that? And finally, we have our defensive backs here, and we have kind of a tale of 2 players here. I thought Kobe Bryant played a little bit better against the Falcons than the 49ers. PFF disagreed. They gave him another terrible grade, which is hard to do given the fact that he actually recorded a quarterback sack. He actually made a play. His QBR against actually went down a couple of points because it was perfect before, now it's not. So, Kobe, I don't know exactly what it is that he did that got his grade completely flushed, but according to PFF, he played worse. I don't know if I agree with that. I thought he was very clearly more comfortable in that game, but still doing something wrong, clearly. And overall, even though I think he played a slightly better game, even though he made a play, he actually made a positive play with that sack on Mariota, it just doesn't seem to me that anything good is coming of him playing nickel. And I don't mean for this team right now. That's obvious right now, right? Like he's not playing well. That would be one thing. Doesn't seem to me that it's doing anything positive for him as a player. Like at this point, you wonder about his confidence. You got to wonder about what he's going to be able to do when he moves back to his natural position, which I believe will happen eventually. And are we going to deal with are we going to have to deal with a player who's had his career altered in a negative way, like Ethan Posick? We went through this with Ethan Posick already. Ethan Posick was a great center in college, a great center prospect. We played him at guard for 3 years, by the time we actually got him to his natural position, who knows what happened to him? And he was okay. Honestly, I don't think he was that bad. And right now, if you look over at what he's doing in Cleveland, I think he's playing fairly well. I think he's showing that he is still a good player, but you took the best center in the draft and then you put him at guard for 3 years, and he was terrible. And by the time you actually started playing him at the position where he was at least passable, he was already almost out of here. So I don't want that to happen again. I like him. I think he's going to be a good player, but this is not really doing him any favors. The opposite, however, can be said about Tariq Woolen, and I believe it was either one of the highest or the highest PFF grade for any Seahawks defender. It was a low bar to clear, admittedly, because our defense was bad, but Woolen played really well, didn't let up much in coverage. I don't recall him getting any penalties against him, to my recollection. He's obviously still struggling to get his head around on some of these plays, but it wasn't like it was the first couple of weeks where you really saw him get a little too physical with these receivers. He had an interception, which I know it came on the last play of the half, which, whatever. I mean, it's not like it was hugely impactful, but it's still an interception, and it was awesome to see him make that play on the ball. And even outside of the interception, he played well. His QBR against right now is below 41. The only thing that is keeping Woolen from being a genuinely good cornerback right now is the penalties, mostly accrued against the Broncos. That was his first game. So if he starts putting up performances like that without the penalty, then wow. This guy's coming along faster than I think just about anybody expected. So great news there, and that's it for the young players. I'm going to get out of here. Peace out. Go Hawks. Let me know what you think.